Welcome to the Redeemed Backslider with your host, Kathy Chastain, Christian-based psychotherapist and a redeemed backslider. This podcast is dedicated to those who have wandered but are ready to return to the life-changing power of grace and the freedom found in Jesus.
Hi, welcome to the Redeemed Backslider. I'm your host, Kathy Chastain. I'm a Christian-based psychotherapist and a Redeemed Backslider. With me today in studio all the way from Oklahoma is Antonio Sarzi. Antonio is actually from this area, but he flew in especially to be on this podcast and to share his testimony with us. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing it because I really have no idea about his background, but he is a concert bassist. And so he recently just got second chair in the Montana Symphony. And so we don't get to hear those stories very often either of people making a living or pursuing a living, you know, in the orchestra symphony world. So I love that you have stayed true to your passion and are not giving up on that.
Yeah. It's been rough.
Yeah.
It's been rough.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's we'll talk about it, but you know, it didn't used to be that way, and I actually tried to run away from it a few times, and one thing that got me into it was Bishop McPhail. Oh. And I was going to college. Well, I was transferring out of COS because I was there, and I didn't really know what to do. It was about my third semester, and I did a whole recital program, and I did my piece memorized. And it went okay for the time. Mm-hmm. And I thought I did terribly at the time, but then all my teachers were like, Antonio, that was the best we ever heard you play. Like, wow. All my teachers had been there since I was in middle school.
Wow.
So they saw my progression. Mm-hmm. And I told myself, I was like, well, maybe I can do this professionally. And I didn't want to do it professionally. At that point in my life, I was like, you know, I want to be involved in the church no matter what. I want to go to Bible school, or Bible college, and I don't really care about music, you know, that much. And I would go to Bishop McPhail all the time, and we would have our private talks, and I'd be like, you know, I don't want to go. I want to go, you know, it's like if I just have a regular job and I'm, you know, just cleaning the restrooms in the church, that I was going to be completely fine with that. Wow. And I just wanted to be involved in ministry and do whatever for the kingdom of God and being a part of the, you know, the ministry. Mm-hmm. And Bishop was like, yeah, you know, you can do that, but I think you should consider, you know, music. And I got offered a scholarship to go to University of the Pacific, and they
in Stockton or Fresno?
Stockton.
Wow.
And I didn't want to go. They were going to pay for half of my college, and wow. I was one of the top applicants. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to go. And so Pastor McPhail was like, let's pray about it, because that was Bishop McPhail's way of doing things. Let's pray about it. So we prayed about it, and we came back after a week, and I told him, I was like, I think I have to go. And he's like, I think you have to go too. And I was like, I don't want to go though. I was like, because, you know, I wasn't raised Pentecostal at all. Like mm-hmm. I had no indication of what the Holy Ghost was or what anything was. I've never been in an apostolic church other than when I entered into the doors of Pentecostal Lighthouse, I think in 2006. No, when did I graduate? 2015. So it was 2015. It was in July of 2015 that wow. I entered into the doors for the first time, and then, you know, God was there. It wasn't the first time that I felt God, but looking back, you know, He's always been there. Yeah. And So to finish off, I reluctantly went to school, and that kind of was the beginning of me kind of falling away. And it's not really for the reasons like, oh, like what people preach about all the time, like I fell into drugs and, rock and roll and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't that at all. Like I never, it never happened that way. But, we can get into that later just because if I can give like some backstory.
Yeah.
On how I got
absolutely.
into church.
And I bet that was not easy for Brother McPhail to let you go. He had to have really believed that you were meant to do that, for him to really encourage you to do that and go,
Right. And I appreciated that about Bishop McPhail. And I just, it's just, I didn't want to do it because I just didn't want to leave.
You didn't want to leave.
I didn't want to leave the church. And like, I wanted to be a part of ministry.
And
do all
that's
that
a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
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 So tell me your history. Tell me the
Cool.
backstory.
Yeah. So, starting from the beginning, I was born 96, December 28, 1996.
So you're 30 years old this year.
Am I? Oh, no.
96, right?
I think 28 now. To be honest, I don't remember. Like every time my birthday comes up, it's like, it's just another day for me. I celebrate everybody else's birthday but my own. But I tend to just forget. Like we'll see is that like I don't remember when I got the Holy Ghost. I don't even remember my baptism date. I have the document somewhere. I can't find it right now.
Okay.
So I lived in Huntington Beach, Long Beach. My dad back in 2005 found a job as a correctional officer, and we moved here to Visalia. And then, just living my life as a normal kid. My dad and my mom instilled in me good values, and I've always been the type of person that doesn't like to follow the crowd very much. Like, we'll talk about it later, but like there were certain songs in UPC that I just hated hearing because it was like everywhere, It was like 2018 was Breakthrough, Eddie James Breakthrough. Every conference had to have break. I was dancing the whole time, but I was just like, everybody had to have their own version of Breakthrough. I was just like, man, I was like, every time I go to a conference, it's like the last song before the preacher comes up is going to be Breakthrough, And then later on in life, I was like, oh, this is a great song. It's always been like that. I see the trend, and I don't like it because people are just like, this is the greatest thing ever, and it's just like, no,
You're not a crowd follower.
I'm not a crowd follower. And later on in life, I'll go, oh, you know what, that it's not a bad, the music in particular. It's like, oh, that wasn't a bad, that wasn't a bad song. That's very interesting, especially from what we have now, all the garbage that's out there now. But I was like that, and because I got picked on as a kid. People always wanted to fight me for some reason. I mean, like, I don't know why. Like, I wasn't a smart mouth, or anything like that. I would just, they just wanted to pick on me, and a majority of my fights were self-defense.
Do you think it was because you were an individual?
Could have been. Could have been that, they could have, it could have been.
Bullies would bully you and make, when they bully you, but that's so different than wanting to fight you.
Right, exactly. And I don't know. Like, it would always end up, I would get tackled or somebody would, physically, start it first. I never, there's only been one time that I physically, started a fight. But that was late. That was in my high school career. That was the last time, but I've always been taught to tell the truth, because if you lie and they find out, it will be more the more you would get in trouble. And so, I went through life, and middle school was particularly difficult for me. I just didn't fit in anything, and then I was in orchestra and jazz band, and I had relationship issues, and fell in love with a girl, and that caused a lot of havoc on my life all the way up until freshman, because I saw, as a little kid, I saw something that we can have something that we can be together and stuff like that. And she was just like, hey, well, she just used me as, when everything else like bad happened to her and she would have guy issues, she would always come to me. So it was always like mixed messages.
Yeah.
And I was the emotional, shoulder to cry on, for lack of a better term. And I just became like a little bit of a loner. And then during that time, it was before that, but during right before middle school, I was 10, 11 at the time, I think. And I saw the first of the first images of naked women and stuff like that, and porn, or corn for the YouTube audience. I saw it for the first time, and
at 10.
Yeah. And people need to understand, like, it's getting younger and younger now.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah.
And I just saw it. It was just innocent. I wasn't looking for it, and
how did you get exposed to it?
When I was in 6th grade, this was when computers, so they were still using like XP 2003, like Microsoft Windows XP, and the kids knew how to get around the security on there. So I saw boobs for the first time in 6th grade on a school computer. Wow. They typed it up, a different name for it on Wikipedia, and it showed it.
Wow.
So before AI and all that stuff that we have now, it's like the kids already knew how to like usurp that. All of a sudden you see 15 guys on a computer, in the classroom,
Wikipedia, who would have ever thought that's where they would go to look for those images?
Exactly.
But yeah, you can go there on a school computer.
Mm-hmm. And
my goodness,
they couldn't get around it, and that really wasn't the catalyst. It was just like, like boys not knowing anything, and all that stuff. But for me, on the home computer, it was I don't know how I got on there, but it was I do at that point I was playing I was playing computer games at the time, but it wasn't anything like it is now, with the internet and stuff like that. But I don't really remember, but I do remember an early morning that I was on the computer, and this site it was just a random site that I think I just clicked on, and then it opened the world it opened, quote unquote, my eyes to all that. And it really accelerated when I was in middle school and high school, because one of the girl that I liked looked like the person that I was watching all the time. Oh. And then when things got really chaotic, it just became a habit, it just became a habit. And it's been something even when I got saved, that it's just when something's been ingrained in you like that for years, and you've just been doing it, it becomes just second nature. And then it later became like an emotional suppressant, for my feelings and stuff like that.
Yep, absolutely.
And it is like one of the not a drug addict. I never had a drug in my life. I have tasted wine and hated it. I've tasted beer and hated it. I tasted coffee and hated it. I've never had a cigarette. I've had a couple cigars in my life, but I'm not a smoker, drinker, drug user, or any of that. But if anything, at least especially when I was younger, that was especially my high school and when I went to UOP, because I was dealing with so much at the time that became like the suppressant for me, and just like my feelings and all this other stuff, and the feeling of loneliness and all that, and that really drove, especially when I was leaving middle school, because I finally got over the girl that I was really into, and her friend though was into me, and like I had not felt love, quote unquote love, like that in so long, and it was just like I was like, oh my gosh, just going over to her house like every day, like we would just want do everything to be together, and that went on for a month, and then she was having a party, and she just wasn't giving me any attention. I felt like really hurt by that, especially because we had been, like we couldn't keep our hands off of each other,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden at this party, she's like not doing anything with me, right? And I left without telling everybody, and I was like crying the whole way back, and then I got super just depressed about it. And then when high school came around, I just went full loner. Like I couldn't tell you why. I just went full loner. I had trouble talking to people. Like I wasn't like it was just that, and then I would play in the orchestra. I was the first kid I was the first bassist at El Diamante to play in the advanced orchestra in like the 10 years that they had been there. So there was like 2011 when I showed up, and usually the advanced orchestra is reserved for like upperclassmen and stuff like that. I was a freshman coming in.
Wow.
And my teacher, Michael Tackett, who I'm still friends with to this day, and adore him, and thank him for a lot, because he's given me a lot of opportunities. He was my orchestra director, then became my director at COS, and then when I left, I would always do musicals for him. Like I've been working with him since 2011.
That's a long time.
Yeah, and
15 years.
Yeah, and so I didn't dedicate myself to music. I was just it was a side thing. I didn't expect it to be my profession. And I was good. I was good, but I
sounds like it came naturally for you.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. Playing bass, is not very difficult. It's not very difficult. It's like all the violins get all the tough, the challenging pieces, and bass tends to get left by the wayside, especially in kind of like middle school and high school arrangements. But Tackett, when I first showed up, he gave me like full on music, like real music almost, and I was like, oh geez, like I actually had to practice now, and I messed up a couple times, but it just wasn't something like it didn't fulfill me.
Yeah.
And I was doing that, and then I was into the corn and all that stuff. It was like every day. And
you can say the word.
I know.
I had to do a mental jumping jack just then when you said corn. I had to.
It's an internet thing. It's for like the censorship and all that, but just for different words, like so the algorithm doesn't demonetize you. And so,
I'm not monetized,
right,
so speak freely.
Yeah, so it was just it was basically a habit every day, and and then I'd play games. I was never an A+ student. Most orchestra kids are like A+. I was more like an A/B student. I never did homework. I hated homework. I still get A's and B's on the tests, right? and I never had really a C at all. I think the only class I had a C on was I decided to do AP English for the first time. Never did any other AP classes before that, and I really struggled in that class.
Yeah.
And but it was like none of those things like really fulfilled me. If anything, it was like gaming, like really like kept me in a good headspace at the time.
Do you think when you look back at your childhood, were you a happy kid in your younger years? Do you feel like you look back and you were kind of lonely or sad or depressed? Like,
yeah, I was lonely, sad, and depressed.
Did you have siblings?
Yes, I have a younger sister and an older half sister. My younger sister, who we'll talk about it later, but she came. My whole family came to God when I came to church, and she was also a musician. She was kind of a jack of all trades type player. She played clarinet, saxophone, cello. What else did she play? Piano sometimes, and sing.
Wow.
I played bass, mostly bass guitar, and then I did sing later half of my high school career, and I would say I'm way happier now. Like I may look tired because I am tired just because of everything, but I am more happier now than I was as a kid, and I'm way more introvert or way more extroverted. Yeah, and I could my wife, she has a small social battery, and I could tell real quickly.
She an introvert also.
Sort of, yeah, okay. Sort of, and but she like gets drained after a while, and I could see it like when we're together with friends and stuff like that, and I just take over, and then she appreciates that, and like I can go on for forever, and back then I wasn't like that, and I really like it was that going into high school that just like cemented me. And just, I literally didn't talk to anybody. I don't even know if I made it. Like thinking back, my memory is like really fuzzy with my middle school and high school thing. I remember a lot of the drama and stuff like that I was a part of course, and the nights at Six Flags, and trying to get closer to people and stuff like that. But that time between freshman and sophomore, it was just like I was just so closed off. I'd sit alone and eat. Everybody's like has friends and stuff like that. I'd sit and eat, and were you doing that to protect your emotions, or were you doing that because it was more comfortable for you? It was more comfortable. More comfortable, and I just,
so were you content in that? I know that ultimately it wouldn't be what you wanted, but
I wouldn't say I was content. Like I would have loved to, be
have a friend.
Have many friends, and be the popular kids, that everybody crowds around, right. and I just. But
you're not an extrovert. Those kids are generally extroverts.
At that time, yeah,
and we don't know that when we're going through those things.
Exactly, and. It's just kind of like, I just was, I couldn't tell you if it was for protection or not. It was just I felt I felt comfortable in the dismay of like everything.
Yeah.
Of like, I don't really have any friends, and I don't have a girlfriend or anything like that, right? And so
was home life happier? Like, did you get along with your siblings? Was it loud and fun? And so you had solace there.
Yeah, absolutely. And my parents have always been an open book with me. Now, my dad, because of the nature of the work, and he was going from first watch, second watch, third watch. So he would one part of my life, like he would leave early morning, come back. That was later in life. What was it? That was first watch, second. I can't remember the days, but basically, so there would be days where like I wouldn't see my dad until 10 o'clock at night because he would go to work at 2. So I'd see him in the morning, and then I wouldn't see him until the next morning because at that point in my life I was like, go to bed at 9 o'clock. You know, didn't deal with that stuff, and you know, just being laid up at night. I wasn't a late night kid.
Did you follow the rules? Were you a rule follower too? It sounds like you were
at home,
a rule.
Yes. At home, yes. But you know, I followed the rules, but would unintentionally break them, like at school. I'd be like, that's a dumb rule. And like, why do we have to do that? Why do we have to? Why is it when I go to Disneyland, I have to be in a chaperone, in a group chaperoned by adults with kids that are fighting left and right on whether they want to get on the Matterhorn or Space Mountain, and then I just leave.
Yeah.
There's tons of funny stories of
You're your own person.
Yeah, I wandered a lot. My mom just finally. When I was younger, I would just wander off. Like we'd be in the grocery store, all of a sudden I'd be missing, and then I'd just find her. And that was always that. And basically, I continued that in my high school, middle school, and I made so many band teachers, you know, sweat and shake, and even the choir director sweat and shake too. They would call my mom. Like the parent would be like, "We don't know where Sarzi is. He disappeared. We don't know. He just disappeared. Like he just vanished. You know." And they would call my mom saying he's gone. Like we don't know where he went. And my mom was like, "He'll find you. Don't worry." And then she's like, "What?" And then I would go. One particular story was like, I think I was a senior, I was a senior at the time. I was with the choir, and they were all fighting over. This group was like I wasn't particularly friends with anybody in these groups, especially in the band. I had no friends in band, like no friends in band. Maybe a couple good acquaintances, but. I hated being in groups because it was just like, you know, I was just the odd kid that didn't fit in with anybody. And, you know.
That's a tough awareness.
Exactly.
It's very hard awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, this will play into play when I came into church. But, you know, it was like, I didn't like being that. And so I would just leave. You know, I would just go walk and
because you could feel it.
Yeah. I could feel it, and the kids. I'd just go and do my own thing. You know? I went on Matterhorn, Space Mountain, whatever else ride, because we get there like right when it opens. Yeah. So there's no way I'm going to get on any of those other rides at the end of the day. And by the time it hits about 11:30, I'm in lunch eating a turkey leg, and all of a sudden a parent comes in and be like, "Hey, where's your group?" And I was like, "What group?" And then they would grab me, and then a couple hours later, it'd vanish again. Yeah. Yeah. So I was
very independent.
Very independent. Yeah.
And a little. I would love to do your personality profile because as you're talking, I'm ticking away in my brain always that trying to figure out your personality type. Yeah. But you also seem to me like a purist.
I try to be.
Yeah, I feel like you're just really kind of like a pure heart, pure intention, pure motive, pure forward thinking in your intention. Just not a lot of deviance. Just very much staying the course that you think is right for you, and very self-aware.
Yeah, I try to be. I try, and that has actually gotten me in trouble a couple times in my life.
Yeah,
making my
because most people aren't
right. Well, making my intentions known.
Yeah,
and that we'll talk about it a little bit, but like I got in trouble in college because I communicated. I communicated to a colleague that I just borrowed her instrument to play on it, and that got me in trouble. She didn't even know about it, and if I didn't say anything, she wouldn't have overreacted the way that she did. But
she didn't understand that there was anything wrong with that.
I literally we'll talk about it, but it was just kind of like, I just made my intentions known that I didn't do it out of malice or anything like that. It was practical. It was just practical for what the situation was. But I met when I was going into my junior year. Things changed
in high school or college.
In high school. In high school, sorry. It changed because I got into choir. They needed somebody who could read music, and I was a bass singer. They needed basses, and I auditioned and I got in. And it was from John Sorber. I love him to death. He really his teaching style really helped me kind of get out of my shell a little bit. And the group, being in a choir, it's really, everybody's outgoing. Even the introverted people are very outgoing, and choir kids are a breed of their own, and they're very accepting of everything. Whether it's good or bad, they're very accepting. And, it was like, I was still kind of, still kind of an outcast, but, I fit in. Like, I fit in, and I'm a good, for some reason, I'm a good singer. Never thought I was. My voice is shot now, but at the time it wasn't. And I really started to gravitate, and I met my good friend, Mark Dalmora, and I met the Dalmora family, and I met Daniel Suarez, and this was the first time that I got introduced to apostolics. Mark was just coming in. Daniel, of course, Daniel Suarez was in there, and things started to change a little bit. Not really church-wise, but my personality started to change. I started to become more outgoing, get out of my shell a little bit. There were still times where I felt completely alone, completely alone, and I would be in class sometimes, and we're not doing anything. I remember in particular, it was the Age of Ultron trailer came out for the first time. This is the only way how I can gauge it. And I was just so alone. I watched it, and I thought it was cool. Cool, another Avengers movie coming out. And I just was like, I felt so alone. And it was just like, I dealt a lot during that time, and, continuously, of just thoughts of suicide.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
And I never did anything, but I did imagine it. And I was like, would it make a difference? Would it make a difference? Would people remember me? And that was a big thing. Never did I ever, grab anything, or try cut myself or anything like that. But it was always there. And it was always a thought, and I started going to church at the time. I went to the Nazarene church right behind my house. And I felt so alone in there. I was. The youth pastor was great, and his name was Daniel Spite, I think. And he was very welcoming, right? But man, was it? I never had any good experiences at any of the churches that I went to before I came to Pentecostal Lighthouse. I used to go to Calvary Chapel a long time ago when I was a kid, and I felt so alone. My sister and I would go, and it was just I never fit into any of the groups. And I would go into the bookstore, and I remember they had Skillet, and it was their Comatose CD was out. I just listened to that forever because it was just the way how the music just gravitated. I gravitated towards that. So my change in music, music for me has showed kind of the change in my personality and stuff. I didn't become goth or anything like that, but it was just the music really spoke to me in that way. And there'd be times where I would sit in the lobby and just nobody would notice me. I was just like, I was kind of like, you know, are they going to shut the lights off on me? You know, and you know, I never fit in any of that, and I'd have bad experiences, you know, just people messing with me and all that stuff, and never went back. And I'd always like it was. I'm trying to remember if it was like every time I'd go to church, I'd come home crying. No, I would not let anybody see me cry, but not let my family see me cry. But like, you know, I was just. The sniffles, you know, the sniffles, and like every time the tears would come down my eyes, and you know, I'd be listening to the music, and it, you know, it just affect me that way, and I'd just be crying, and I was just like, man, you know, this is, I would just pray sometimes, and I'd be like, you know, God, just like, just mumble stuff, you know, or I don't even know what I would pray sometimes, and I remember in particular when I went to the Nazarene church, it was a Wednesday night. Wednesday night was youth night. Mm-hmm. I knew some of the people there from school, and I remember, I don't know why churches do this, but they shut off the lights for the youth. I don't know why they do that. And I've been to a couple apostolic churches where they do that too, especially for the youth. I don't understand why they turn off the lights. But you know,
maybe to get their attention,
probably, and that's probably why. Mm-hmm. And I was in the back, and they were singing, you know, the song and stuff like that, and I was reading the lyrics, and I was just like, I felt God, like in that church. Nobody else could, but you know, I had my hands lifted, and I was crying, and I was just like, you know. I couldn't, you know, it was just like all the pain, you know, all the pain that I had, and you know, I and my problems and my addiction. I was just like, you know, it's just like, you know, I always knew, my parents have always taught me to kind of respect God. You know, we never went to church or anything like that, but we believed. And we believed in respecting God, you know, and you know what the best way we knew how, you know, and we took it seriously, you know. It's like we took it seriously, you know, even though we may not have lived right, and well, we didn't really, but I just was crying, and then everybody was looking at me funny. You know, it was just like, why is this kid crying? Like, why? This is this Wednesday night, you know? It's just the thing that we come to do, and then we go play basketball afterwards.
Right.
You know, and there's a timer. There's a countdown timer for the message up front, so everybody sees it, you know?
Right.
And after service, and I just couldn't, like, nobody was dealing with me, and, you know, I just walk home. You know, it's like nobody noticed that I would disappear, you know, and it was, you know, it was hard as a kid, you know. It's like you go in, and you know, I didn't know it at the time, but you know, I was really searching for God, and I was searching for God. I didn't know it, that I was like really searching for Him, but you know, He was there.
Antonio, I have encountered other kiddos, not very many, that are very similar in the depth of their aloneness and the awareness of how alone they are. It's so devastating. But I also see, you know, I also feel like that space that you had that was so empty, I hate to say that it was by design, because it is so incredibly painful. But I feel that is one way that God calls you, is that your God-sized hole was so much bigger than perhaps others, because God has more for you. You know, he just had something so special for you
Right.
that you would understand, that you would grasp, and it would be deeper. It would mean something different for you at that age.
Right. And it was just you know,
It's devastating.
It is. It is. And to be honest, I didn't really feel like I'd make it to past 25. You know, it's just
because
like,
you thought you might take your own life, or
Well,
that you just couldn't see past
I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it. In all honesty, like I wanted to join the military. That was the biggest thing when I was a kid. I saw Saving Private Ryan when I was like 4 years old. You
Oh
know?
my word, I was
Yeah.
so old
And
when
that
I
didn't
saw that.
and that didn't the Omaha Beach thing did not affect me.
Yeah.
Like it didn't. And then like I was playing Call of Duty, the original Call of Duty, and I had friends who, well, I had my dad's friends. I had people around me that were in the military, you know, law enforcement, and then my dad's friends. Some were retired special forces, and I was reading books about it, and you know, I knew I knew for a kid the gravity of the situation, you know, being in war, and
That you could die.
yeah, that I could die.
Yeah.
But I want to be a door kicker. Like I want to kick doors down, kill bad guys, go home, you know, smoke cigars, you know, to the fat lady sings, you know, that type of thing. And you know, I was like, you know, if that kills me, you know, at least I went down fighting.
Yeah.
You know,
You weren't afraid.
Yeah, I had some sort of purpose, you know, and during that time, I really, you know, I wasn't in sports. I did karate, and then my karate teacher died of a heart attack. He had a heart attack in the shower, and that was in middle school, and that devastated me.
Yeah.
I when I got the news, like I cried for like 4 hours. They sent me home because I was so distraught about it.
You're such a feeler.
I know. You know.
But that's
You try to put the face on, and it's just
Right.
that you know, I do feel, and I do feel very, very much so.
Yeah,
And
you're an old soul.
Yeah.
I don't. That's not a Christian term, so I need to rephrase. But you were very aware and very, very mature for your age, and I think it's because you saw past all the surface stuff. You understood the depth. You understood the meaning. You understood way more than probably what you were able to articulate
Yes.
or even comprehend, but it was still going in, and you were understanding it.
Right. And understood it.
Oh,
to the
that's
best that
heavy.
I could. Yeah, understood
Heavy.
it to the best that I could.
Yeah.
You know, and
Without language or meaning to know what it was you were going through.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, it was just it was hard for me. And
No doubt.
you know, going back to, you know, junior year, I started to become friends with Mark, like really close friends to him, and he invited me to church. Was it my junior year or senior year? One of those years, and then Daniel did too. But you know, I was like, oh, I'm going to the Nazarene. Not really going to the Nazarene,
Yeah.
but I felt, you know, at least loyalty because I was going there every once in a while. And you know, kind of just put it away. I was, you know, they didn't push it. You know, I always saw Daniel, you know, because Daniel's like 6'5" or something like that. He in high school he was the tallest guy. He towered over everybody.
I think he just recently came back to the Lord, right?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. I'm so happy for him, and I hope to see him. He's in Waco now, so he's a little closer to me. But you know, it's like I hope to see him again one day. You know, Lord willing, and I hope that Lord willing we can all come back. Our group, our clique, you know, Fernando, Mark, myself, Adam, Daniel, Manuel, like everybody. I have a picture of our group when we went on a retreat. I think it was 2016, and it had, you know, the Silvas, Pastor Kane and his children, and Brianna, Michael, Manuel, Daniel, Fernando, and everybody else. I was Hannah and all these people that were in there. And sometimes I don't have it framed anymore. I used to have it framed because I really cherish that moment.
Yeah.
But I hope one day like we can all come back together, Lord willing, here on earth. We'll all see each other, in the pearly gates and on the golden streets. But I hope one day that we can all like see each other again, and rejoice in the Lord for that. He brought us all back together. But going back, it was difficult. My junior year was a lot better. Going back to my music career, I went to Allstate. It's called Coda Allstate, and it's a honors orchestra. You have to audition to get in. I got principal in the symphony, which is the first chair, and I like completely upset everybody because I was just the one kid from El Diamante, and you got all these San Francisco, Santa Monica kids, that are playing like real stuff in their youth orchestras, and all of a sudden this goofy Central Valley kid just shows up and wins, and and I had a great time. I met my conductor and mentor Thomas Lowenheim, who's he's the cello teacher, the string chair, and the orchestra director for Fresno State. And so that was the first time I met him in 2012. Now, going into 2013, my junior year, I went into the symphony, which is the group, the higher level group, and I didn't do good at all. I think I was last chair for that. And I almost got into a fist fight with a cellist because I bumped into his. There's so much backstory with that, but basically, long story short, I bumped his cello on accident, and then he got in my face and during the concert and made a whole scene. And I tried to de-escalate as much as I could, but I was surrounded by everybody. Like the bunch of kids just formed a circle around me.
Yeah.
And this guy's threatening to kill me, right? Like devil just was like, just like it just came out of him.
Wow.
I don't say that lightly, but it was just kind of like, like he just exploded, and I got really mad. My dad saw it. My parents were upstairs, and my dad just had knee surgery. So he's walking up the stairs, and my mom is watching this. And she tells me, she goes, something changed in your face, in your stance. And she yelled at my dad. She's like, go. And my dad's like hobbling down the stairs, trying to get down there and to get, to break everything up. And then they pulled the guy off of me finally. And I yelled at him. I was like, I'm gonna cut your effing head off. As a kid, and I was a cuss.
That's very graphic.
Oh yeah, I was.
Very graphic.
I in my head, because I was going through the situation. I was like, I can't say. I have to say something that he'll stop. But in light of all that, everybody heard me, and my face went white. My dad saw it, heard it, and my face went white. And I was like, well, we got to go play Beethoven now. He was the last kid to come upstairs, and I got this German conductor I've never seen a conductor give me the worst stink eye I've ever seen as a musician. We played Eggman and a bunch of other pieces I don't remember, and they wanted to do a report. So this is part of my character. I went and I told the truth. This is exactly what I said. I did this, I did that. And they're like, okay, well, you'll hear something from the teacher or hear something from the association about it. So I was like, okay. I come back and I go and talk with Tackett, and I go, hey, did you hear about what happened over the weekend? I was in Stockton too. Or no, it was in Redlands, the University of Redlands that we were at. And he goes, no, why? He goes, and I just looked at him and goes, Antonio, what did you do? Because they knew because I had gotten into fights in high school and middle school, so he was like familiar with it. And I told him what happened. He's like, no, Antonio, you can't do that. and then they never sent anything. And then when I auditioned again for my senior year, they accepted me. They accepted me, and they all knew my name. they all knew my name, but nothing bad happened that year. And but that was kind of like my musical career at that point. I was doing a lot. I did my first musical for Tulare County Office of Education, which was Fiddler on the Roof, and that got me hooked on musical theater.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love theater. My dream job is to win an opera position, a full-time opera position. It's just, there's something magical about putting music to what's happening on stage.
Yeah.
And I can't get enough of it. Like, it's just, even though I'm playing the same thing every night, the crowd's different, the energy's different. I've had dead crowds that wouldn't laugh at anything. Wouldn't laugh at anything or go shocking or whatever. And then they come up to me afterwards and say, that was the greatest show. We saw it on Broadway. You guys did it so much better than what they did on Broadway. And then I've had shows where the crowd was just bombastically funny, right? And they would just go along with everything, and it was wonderful. And I that really hooked me, but I was still kind of like, I'm not gonna do it professionally. Like, this is just gonna be a thing I do every summer.
Yeah.
And my senior year, we go to New York. So I got into the chamber choir. The choirs at the musical qualities at El Diamante back in that time, from 2008 to 2014, 15. So my director left, Tackett left. He got the job at COS, rebuilt that whole program. But the music program at LD was still really strong. I mean, really strong. Like, they were going, like, choir. We went to New York, and we were singing at, Empire State. We went to this African Methodist Episcopal church. We were featured guests, and we were doing like spirituals and stuff like that, singing spirituals. And I went to New York with Mark, and Daniel and I became really good friends. I loved Daniel because it was he was just the towering giant, and I always loved being around him, and would always just, like, we were just good acquaintances and probably good friends, I would say, at that time. And Mark and I just really, like, grew. I became so much more social because of that. The chamber choir really kind of changed my outlook on things, because we had a chamber retreat, and it's tradition at the chamber retreat over the campfire that people start sharing things, like very, very, like,
vulnerable.
Yeah. And I don't remember what I said, but it was just a bond with everybody. I was good acquaintances with everybody, but it was a type of acquaintance that, I can work with these people, and, I can be vulnerable with them. And that really changed kind of my outlook on things in my life, that, like, hey, that, like, everybody's going through something, and, you're not the only one. Even though, like, I feel incredibly lonely all the time, it's just, I have this outlet, and to be in this, and when Tackett left, the orchestra wasn't as good as it used to be, and I started to kind of fall out with the bass in particular. I just started taking private lessons, and it was just kind of like I just didn't see myself, like, really playing the bass. My dad sold his car, though, when I was a junior, to buy me an upright. I'll be forever grateful. I had to give it away. I had to sell it to get the conversion on my bass that can fly with me now. And I really didn't want to sell it, but I was just like, the only way I could pay for it is if I sell that bass. And I'm forever grateful for that bass and for what my dad did. He sold his Mustang convertible to pay for it.
Wow.
And I did it, and I continued doing musicals, and I continued. I started working a little bit, like, outside, doing a couple gigs here and there. And
did you find joy in those things? Like,
yes.
Did the loneliness hit you when you would be at home by yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But if you were out doing music, or you felt some form of life.
Absolutely. It felt like this happens every concert, but I get this high. Mm-hmm. It takes me forever to pack up. Like I'm always the last one to leave.
You're very things matter so deeply to you. Like even your choice of words and acquaintance, you've used that several times.
Yeah,
you understand the difference between a casual friend versus someone that you would call a friend versus the rest of us. We just call everybody a friend, but you very much understand the difference and the meaning for it. So,
right.
I think that's beautiful, though, Antonio.
Yeah, because I'm not going to come on here and say like I was friends with everybody. Like I was friends with, I would say I was friends with Daniel and Mark especially, but like everybody else, they were just acquaintances. Mm-hmm. I never.
But most people don't even know how to distinguish between those two words in a meaningful way, the way you. Mm-hmm. The way you understand it and the way it feels for you.
Right. And I would always be there for them.
Sure, of course.
If they needed help with something, I would.
You had a different understanding of the depth.
Exactly.
Of where they stood with you.
This is very surface level.
Right.
Like I might say, like, how you doing? The weather's good. Everything okay with you? Yeah. Okay. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
It was just like that. And Mark and I, love him to death, and I need to call him more. I've started contacting some of my old brothers, and I need to do it more. And
we all do.
I feel really bad about it, and it all started about a month ago when I was in Helena. I was praying. I was in Bozeman, getting ready to leave, and I was sitting in the airport. I've been in so many airports now. It's like I just sit there and I just start talking to God. I try to. I will say that the last month has been really, really hard on me, and just spiritually and physically and everything. And I feel bad for not talking to God a lot as much as I would during the other time, but it's like God and His mercy and His grace on us, and I just it was just the family. Mark's family went with us to New York, and it was just like that was. I think that it would tell you like I never left. I never left them to go do whatever I wanted in New York. Like.
Oh, you didn't wander away.
I didn't wander away.
Like you did with other
Exactly.
other groups.
I didn't wander away.
Oh, that's very telling.
Yeah, and didn't wander away. If I didn't do anything, it was like I was just in the hotel or anything like that. But when we were out and about walking around, I never would leave them and get up and just vanish. And
wow, that's profound.
Yeah, and because he was the one that brought me to church. So we graduated, we had a big old party, this and that with Mark and my friend Christian, who's not in church. He went into the Navy after that, so I never saw him again. But we graduated. I tried to get into the military, but I was medically disqualified because of my eyes. Found out that I have some sort of retina genetic disease called retinitis pigmentosa. I have a unusual variant, and I would go to UCLA every year because it degenerates. Basically, I have macular degeneration in reverse. Can't see out of my peripherals. Can't see out of my peripherals.
Both eyes?
In both eyes, yeah. And I have night blindness on top of that. So it doesn't stop me from like wandering off.
Yeah.
but it has affected me in that, I couldn't join the military. I tried through the band because if I get into the band, but I had no idea of how like to audition for this stuff. I just always would get in and win, you didn't
know the process.
Didn't know the process, right? And how much would be needed to win. And I got a letter from the commander, the premier band. I was auditioning for the Air Force premier band in Washington, D.C. and she sent me a letter saying, like, hey, come back. It was a terrible audition. But they realized, like, oh, like, we can't, he's just a kid coming out of high school,
Yeah.
It's like he hasn't even graduated yet. Like, they sent me a letter. She sent me a handwritten letter, and
Wow.
just like, hey, come back when you have some more experience, And I didn't take it as a devastation. I was like, okay, I'll just get into the military. I want to be a PJ. Like, I want to go in.
Yeah.
Their insignia as an angel there's an angel with parachute on top.
Yeah.
And
Red beret, right?
Yep, and it's for
My friend did that.
For what was their motto? So that others may live.
Yeah.
So that others may live, and I really wanted to join that.
Yeah.
It's like, why not? Like, jump in. Like, there was a Nat Geographic show that followed those guys in particular. I was watching that like crazy. Like that was like, I wanted to do that, and like I be a doctor, in the sky, just go in, get them, get out. Like, that's exhilarating.
Right.
And never been like, I would rather jump out of a plane. I've jumped out of a plane a couple times, skydiving, than be on a roller coaster. I hate roller coasters. Like, I just hate the feeling of like the inside. But free falling from 13,000 feet is like the greatest thing ever to me. And
They're different. Your stomach doesn't drop to your...
no. Only on the roller coasters. It's because I'm stuck to it. If you notice any of the similarities, I don't like to be.
Right,
I
you
like
don't
to
want
wander.
no confinement.
Yeah, I'd rather fly out of a plane. Like jump out of a plane than
How funny.
Than be confined to a roller coaster. And that didn't happen. So I had a recruiter that was really gung ho for me. She went on maternity leave, and then I got another guy. And he was basically like, I told him up front, like, I have night blind. I didn't know it was automatic disqualification. And so I could have lied, like many people do, and become like grand heroes. Like, you'll be surprised how many World War II vets and people that have accomplished like really great things, like they failed the eye exam and lied and memorized the test to get in, because they didn't want to be that guy that didn't get in.
Yeah.
And I was truthful, and I said, I had night blindness, I have no peripheral vision. The guy was like, okay, then you just, we have a copy of the birth certificate and all that stuff, and I gave them my stuff, and they never called me.
Wow.
And I tried calling him a bunch of times, and my mom like knew something was fishy, because military doesn't let recruits just leave the net.
Right, they're gonna keep you. Somehow, some way.
They're gonna try to keep you.
Yeah.
And I got a hold of the guy by calling the office number, but not his cell phone. I kept calling his cell phone. I called the office number, didn't recognize it. He's like, oh, yeah, your stuff is still being looked at right now. I don't know if they threw it in the incinerator or did whatever. Well, what they didn't know was my mom has cousins that they were lieutenants that worked in the Pentagon. And she called them up, asked for a favor, and they were trying to look for my papers, and they said, your papers never showed up. So I wasn't devastated. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go get a regular job, and I had graduated, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go find a regular job, and I'm gonna move out and find my own place, that type of stuff. And my mom's like, no, you're going to COS. It's like, what? So yeah, you're going to COS. It's like, okay. And were you regularly going to church at this time? Not at that point. I just started, so it was about June when my mom kind of just was like, no, you're going to COS, you're going to do music. And I was like, okay. So I just went along with it, because I didn't have anything better to do. It was July, or it was late. It was about mid-June. I think it was about mid-June. Yeah. And it was a Friday night. It was like six. I remember this. It was like 6:53. And I called Mark, because I just remembered like the service, what time the service was, what the church was called, and what time the service started. And I called Mark up, and he was on the platform, the choir and stuff like that, the youth choir. And I called him, and I was like, hey, I know it's late, but can I get a ride to church? It's like I got nothing better to do, and I just remembered, and he's like, yeah, I'll be there in a second. They waited for me.
Wow.
They waited for me. They didn't. I think we were one of the few last ones to come in. Church back then didn't need to start right as the countdown.
Right.
The timer, and yeah, they wait. Brother Jeremy always asking. Start the service off with asking like what God did for them over the week. And I sat there. I was in shorts and I think I had a backwards hat and a little cross on my neck, wooden cross that was given to me. In one of the Nazarene services that, they were like, write the problem that has like consumed you or, that you want to break free from. And I had wrote, at the time I wrote lust in the back because I had the problem. And the moment I walked into the church, it was like everything that was eating me was just gone.
Wow! Immediately you felt it.
I didn't feel God, but immediately it was like the stuff that was bothering me.
Yeah,
was gone.
I find it interesting. Your reaction is almost like it disappeared from your head and your ears. Yeah,
it just lifted off of me. It was like because for me it's all like I don't feel problems in my body. It's up here
in your head.
It's in my head. And it just all vanished, That was when the Silvas were there, Tamara was there, Haley was there. She had not yet been married, so Manuel and Daniel and all those guys we were all there. I always loved it, the youth services with Jeremy, and that it's like you were 30-something years old and you just showed up. Like who cares,
Yeah.
And that was the first time, and I think I continue. I can't remember if it was every Friday at least after that, and then I started going Sunday. Started going on Sunday mornings, and then Wednesday nights. It just was like gradually. And Mark would always pick me up, or I'd just get dropped off. And I still felt alone. Like it was still it was still there. Like there were days where I just sat on the rail. Or like hanged out on the rail. They'd play volleyball. It was hard for me. I couldn't. I didn't want to be the guy that caused the team to lose because I didn't see the ball or I ran into somebody. Because there was always
because youth service at that time is at night. So with your night blindness, you wouldn't be able to see.
Right, and I was always afraid of like decking a girl because it was always I would always like run into women and really hit them because I wouldn't see them, and all of a sudden I just like full force shoulder check them. I'm like, oh crap, and I didn't.
And that didn't do anything for you, not feeling awkward.
That didn't do any favors for me with the women, And I didn't want to be that guy that just like shoulder checks a woman.
Yeah.
It's like, oh crud.
And for those of you at home, Pastor Jeremy Kane, our pastor, was youth pastor for, I believe, 21 years before he stepped in to take over the church as bishop retired.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And
so many of his youth, like you, he just grew up loving them because youth was so accessible.
It was.
It was just so raw and real, and you got to really know the people, I think.
Absolutely. It was not
formalized.
It was not a formal performative thing to go to youth service. It was like Pastor Jeremy would always we would go on for like half hours sometimes about talking about like, what God did for them over the weekend. Like he would wait. Like he'd be like, anybody else? And just he would sit there and wait.
He's great like that.
Yeah. And
well, he genuinely loves people.
Exactly. And he wanted to know.
You felt he does want to know, yeah. But it's so that is what you needed.
Exactly.
Someone to see you, because that is the theme throughout everything you said is nobody noticed.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know how you feel now that you're almost 30 this year. Mm-hmm. If you were born in 1996, this is 2026. So, but I think people see others that are sitting. I think that a lot of people are insecure in themselves.
Yeah.
They don't know what to say. Mm-hmm. They don't know if they're going to say the wrong thing, and I think also they don't want to make that person feel bad because they are saying something.
Right.
Like it's just such a catch-22, I think probably for both sides.
Yes.
Of that dynamic, but to be where you were at and to be so aware that nobody noticed. Yeah. It's.
Yeah. It was
I will say, Antonio, I'm grateful. As a Christian and as a therapist, I'm grateful that you cried because I think it was needful. You got it out. One of my questions was going to be whether or not you liked fighting.
No.
And I'm grateful for that too, because I wonder if that was a test of the enemy to see if he could lure you into aggression, because many people that feel how you felt find aggression exhilarating for them, liberating for them, because it's a sense of control and it gives them an outlet,
I never felt that way. It was always last resort.
Yeah.
I always am like trying to de-escalate. And I will say, like, I have this weird ability to kind of like feel that this is the point of no return.
Right.
Like, if we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight now. Like,
yeah.
if it's always
when the
resort.
moment's there.
Yeah, and that's what happened when the first and only time I ever like physically instigated a fight was I got this kid in my face, was calling me B with an itch and doing all this stuff, and I dropped a lug nut. He hated me in the class. He just like picked on me all the time. I dropped a lug nut. And I'm about to pick it up, and then he calls. He's like, pick it up, huh? And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, pick it up, B, pick it up. And I was like, no. I was like, you're really going to do this? And he just got all up in my face, right? Because it's just man thing to do. It's just like shove your nose into somebody's face. And, I'm making fun of him because I'm like sick of this kid. I'm like, your breath smells, back up right now. And
so you held your ground. You weren't like
I don't back down.
Yeah.
But do I revel in the fighting? No.
Yeah.
But with him in particular, like this was in front of the auto shop class. Like we're in class when all this is happening. And that naturally I knew I wasn't thinking this, but naturally I needed to like put this kid in his place because this is getting annoying, right? Because this kid in particular always liked to pick on me for some reason, and everybody's watching, so that like this is gonna live or die here,
right?
And so I slapped him. I slapped the crap out of him, and he was so shocked He was so shocked from it, and then I knew. I was like, it's on. Like we're going. Like I know I instigated it, but he was so shocked by that the teacher was like, I'll change it. Well, he's like, Jeremiah, go to the corner. And he's still like in shock. Like he just got slapped.
Oh, yeah, because he thought he was going to push you around.
Right. He's like 6'2", or to 6'3". He's like, he's towering me, and I slapped him. And he when he finally snapped out of it, he realized like he just lost this, and he goes and punches the paint cabinet, right? And I was like, you're gonna get it now. And I said, you mad, bro? I go, that was the thing. That was the thing that the kids were saying back then. It was like, you mad, bro? Because he punched the paint can, paint cabinet, and then I got in trouble by that. And my the principal, the vice principal was telling me, like, because I told the truth. I was like, I instigated the fight, and my lawyer showed up. My mother showed up, and she was like, you told him what? Like, because I just told him the truth. Like, yeah, he was verbally instigating me, and I physically started it. And the vice principal was like, "Oh, you should have just let him just, say whatever." And,
that's not okay, though.
It's not okay for you to get physically, involved. And my mom was like, "Go sit outside." And she closed the door. And she chewed out the vice principal never looked at me the same ever again after that. And they stopped messing with me after that, right? And it didn't help that all the girls that were around him saw that.
Yeah.
And that, because women are, for kids at that age, for guys at that age, women are a great litmus test of where you are.
Right, right.
And he threatened me on Facebook. This was like early when Facebook started. He found my account and threatened me, and I was laughing the whole time. I was like, "Hey, look at this, Mom!" I had a whole thing typed out ready to, and she's like, "No, don't say anything." They sent it to my academic advisor, and then he was never seen again. He moved to a different school after that because I got suspended for 3 days, and I had to come back and do a final. And my teacher was not happy about that.
Yeah.
But I was suspended for 3 days, and then I think he got expelled or something like that, or highly suspended. He moved schools, never saw him again. But I never, like, with that, and even when I was like, I'm going to cut your, I'm going to, the physical altercation at the concert, like, I never want to get physical. I try to do all my best because I know the consequences that can happen. Like, even when I was that young, like, I knew somebody can get killed.
Yeah.
I knew it. Like, if I hit him and he falls on his head wrong way, he's dead. Like, that was his nature. It was games like had shown me that, because I was not like a big Call of Duty player, like Modern Warfare 2 lobbies, all you that know all the craziness that was in there. But I was an RPG guy. I was a role-playing guy. I love playing role-playing games. Like, I played the game that really affected me was a game called Mass Effect. It was a game that your choices meant something. And, like...
How old were you when you started playing that game? Because I wonder how much...
2010. It was 2010. So I played... The first game
so
I played was
14.
Mass Effect 2. That was when Mass Effect 2 came out. I bought that game. I could not put that game down because it was like I was the hero in the story, right? Like... And then I bought the first game, and the cool thing about this game series is that your choices that you made in the first game can transfer over to the second game, and your choices directly affect what happens in the second game, right? So, like, if I one of the major decisions was which of your crew to leave behind to sacrifice. You have to save one, and you can't save both of them. They make it deliberately where you can't save both of them. And you have to choose. And it's like, do you really like this character? Do you not like this character? And these characters are so fleshed out. Like, I love stories.
I mean, you were already wired for things to mean so much to you. And that was such a great fit, but probably also just added to how serious you were about everything.
Right. And I couldn't put it down. It was amazing. It was so exhilarating. Like, I hate to say it, but basically you are the hero, you are the savior in the story, right? And your choices matter. Like, people look up to you. The NPCs, non-player characters, they look up to you.
Yeah.
And and it's like your decisions directly affect what happens in the main game. Mass Effect 2 had it's a character driven story. It's not an overarching there is a massive threat, but the focus is on the characters, and these characters are so fleshed out, and they deeply affected me. And it was like you could romance characters and stuff like that. So meaning develop romantic relationships and stuff and then you get a payoff at the end and stuff like that. But it's all building towards a suicide mission where you have to enter into this relay and get the bad guys and
my therapy brain just kicked in. That it bothers me so much. But go on.
No, but it was just like, you have to make choices, and if you don't make the right choices, like your teammates die. And you might not get the best possible ending. And so I was obsessed with that game. I think Mass Effect 2, I put like 700 hours into it. Most of it was like paused. Like I'd pause and like leave and come back. But I was obsessed with it. And then I played Mass Effect 1, and then it would transfer over. 2012 Mass Effect 3 came out. That was the one time I stayed home. I bought it. I went to the midnight release. I got the collector's edition. Like, I wanted to see how this story ends, right? Because I was just like, I spent 3 years of my life with these characters, and I wanted to see how this ends. Like, this is the big shebang. The Reapers are here. They're gonna extinguish. They're gonna. It's a space opera, basically. And there's alien characters and human characters and all this. And you're a human, and you can play as male, female, that type of thing, and have different relationships. And it was just like I wanted to see how it ended. And I remember when the last piece of downloadable content came out, the last DLC came out. It was Citadel. And Citadel is the hub where you go to. Basically, it's the developer's love letter to the fans, right? It's a goofy DLC. It's a goofy story, but it's so heartfelt. And just like, thank you for being with us the whole time. And I went through it, and when the last scene played, and it was like, the characters were like, because this is right before the final mission. You have to go back to take back Earth. It's been completely destroyed, and this is basically the last stand, right? The Reapers are like this overwhelming threat that's going to extinguish all life in the galaxy, and you're the spearhead. You're the tip of the spear, and the last scene of the Citadel. It has all your friends. Like, you just had this party, this R&R party. It's like everything rough up to this point, and the characters were like, we had some of the best times on this ship, and and then your character Shepard goes, the best. And I got off the game, and I went straight. I cried the whole night. I cried myself to sleep. It was so just the first time I played it. It was so like deeply emotional for me because I spent so I think
you invested so much.
It was like 2014 when that DLC finally came out. It was 2014. I'd spent like 4 years of my life being with these characters, and they got me
real
through
to
all
you.
that. Yeah, it was real. It was real, and and that got me through a lot of the hard, kind of the hardships.
So you felt like that made up a little bit for the loneliness.
Yes, the whole.
And that's probably there was a subconscious place for you that knows if that's over, then you're going to go back to that place of that being alone. Yeah. Was the pornography still very much part of that as well? Yes. So that didn't leave. Okay. And then so you come to church.
Absolutely.
And right away, Antonio, did you feel like you were home? Did it feel like family, or did that take a while?
It was fast. Did I feel like it was home? No, but was it better? Yes. Not completely there yet, but I wanted to go. Yeah. Like it was like I wanted to go, and
you found a place of belonging.
I found a place of belonging, and for transparency, it wasn't I was also drawn by the girls. Like, I'd never been in a relationship. Really. And so, of course, it was like, it was there, like beautiful. I'd never seen, apostolic women before, and the dresses, no makeup. And I was just like, wow, like this is different. Everybody's kind of just, this was way before, way before what people wear now, but still it was like, they would like, just didn't interest me.
That's only like 10 years ago.
Exactly.
That's I know a lot has changed in a short amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah. And but it was, it was God. He was drawing me. And I didn't have any Bible studies with anybody. I just was going to church, just listening to the messages. And it was one Sunday, I think. And I just enjoyed the running, the shouting, and all that. When we went to that AME church, when we went to New York, we were featured guests in the choir booth. And black church is just like, we're like 2 hours into praise and worship, like R&B, and we're like, I'm like, this I like this. Like, I'm tired of the CCM music, where it's all kind of like atmospheric, and there they are, they're like playing funk and R&B, and I'm just like, this is great. But when I came to Pentecostal, it was different. It was just like there was something behind it, instead of like, oh, it feels good. The groove feels good. It was just, there was something behind it. And that one Sunday, it was like I went up to the altar. I always sat up front. And never really, when I came to church, I never felt the need to sit in the back. Mm-hmm. I was always like, hey, I'll sit up front. There's no seat. It wasn't a big deal to me. And I just lifted my hands, and I can't remember who prayed for me, but an older lady prayed for me, and then I started mumble jumble. It was just mumbling.
Prayer
stuff.
Language.
Yeah, just prayer language, and I started speaking in a really bad other tongue. It's like it wasn't as pronounced as it is now, but I just started speaking in tongue. I didn't feel a thing. There was no like, that just like washed over me or anything like that. It was basically I just started speaking, and nobody noticed. Mark noticed, and he's like, after the service, he's like, bro, did you get the Holy Ghost? And he had been pining for it.
Yeah.
He didn't get it until senior camp that July.
Wow.
So this was about mid-July, I think. It was right before senior camp. And he asked me, he goes, did you get the Holy Ghost? And I was like, what's that? Didn't know anything about it, right? I was like, what's that? And he goes, well, God fills you with His Spirit, and then you start speaking in other tongues. I was like, I don't know, like I don't know what I got. And he's like, were you speaking something like that you just didn't? I heard it, right? Like I've heard.
You heard yourself.
I heard myself, and then I, just like being in the church, I was like, it didn't bother me. I was like, hey, cool. Like I hear people going, and all this stuff, and I was like, that's cool, it didn't bother me at all, and then I started doing it, and then he comes up to Bishop McPhail. Bishop just got done preaching, and he was on the podium, and Mark goes, hey, Pastor, I think Antonio got the Holy Ghost. And he's like, what?
Wow.
He's like, what? And he's like, oh, that's great. And then he started going through the questionnaire, and I was like, yeah, I think that's what was happening. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And then I started. Bishop started up his new convert class on Sunday morning. So I started going to that. And then I don't remember when I wanted to get baptized. I don't know who was preaching. Somebody was preaching fire and brimstone, basically, and I heard it, and I got scared. Like, I was genuinely scared. I was always afraid. Like, I was always afraid of hell. I had a picture of hell, burning the lake of fire and stuff like that. My picture of hell now is a lot different than back then. But I thought basically it was a lake of fire. I was afraid of that, and I came to Pastor. I came to Pastor in his office. I was like, Pastor, I want to be baptized now. Like, I don't want to go to hell. Let's go. Let's get baptized. In any other church, they would have done it immediately. But Bishop said, okay, let's hold off on this. And he started talking to me. He started talking to me about like what it means to be baptized. And I was like, Pastor, let's do this now. Like, you just, whoever, I can't remember if it was actually Bishop that was preaching or if it was a guest preacher that came in, evangelist. But I was like, you just were saying that we can't guarantee. There's no guarantee about tomorrow. Like, let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah.
I don't care about wet clothes. Let's go and do this right now. And he was like, no, let's wait until Wednesday. Now, every time when I tell people that, they get real funny.
Right. Because we're all about let's go.
Yeah,
yes, we're with you.
And absolutely, I'm for that too.
Yeah.
But
he wanted you to understand.
Well, and also he wanted my family to show up.
Yeah, but that's
and
wonderful.
And because
it's special.
Right, exactly. And what happened was that was the first time all my family came to church. So my parents and my sister. So they saw me get baptized. They did the Wednesday after that Sunday. So, I was all ready for it. And, I was like, hey, I'm in the baptismal tank, and Pastor Jeremy baptizes me, right? It's a Wednesday night. And this time I felt something. It was like, I know people sometimes like they feel terrible or they feel like the best thing in the world. And I did that day. Mm-hmm. When I went down in the water, I came back up. It was like something just lifted off of me, right?
Praise God.
And I was in the tank for like 25 minutes after the baptism. I was in the tank for a long time. I was just praying and praising God. And then Pastor Jeremy had to go in, and he looks over the corner and he goes, hey, is everything okay? I was like, yeah, I just feel awesome. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he went back into the service, and then I got changed and all that. But
I love that you did that, though. You just lingered in the presence of God.
Yeah. They closed the door, and you just see me. You just see my shadow just go back and forth. And my parents saw that. My sister saw that, and speaking about my family, my dad got the Holy Ghost when Brother Erpeldine came a couple months after that, and then my sister got it. My sister got it. But the last one to get it was my mom. So all my family has been baptized within I think 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
I was in church.
Wow.
And I thought my sister was going to be the hard one to crack, but she was the one after my dad. And my dad used to have night terrors. And, I was always understanding, going back to kind of the reality of the situation. I had a story from my high school principal. Basically his dad was a cop, and kid had a fight with his dad. He didn't say I loved you when he got out of the car. Well, dad was killed and his dad was killed in a traffic stop. And I remember I was sitting in the auditorium. I started crying. I just started crying because I was like, I could never do that to my dad. Leave him, when he goes to work. My dad's been attacked a couple times. He's been injured. So, I made it my life's purpose that I would, even if I'm mad at my loved one or something like that, that I would never, if things aren't resolved, I would never leave and not tell them I loved them. Because I would not be able to live with the fact that I didn't tell my dad that the last thing on his mind was that his son didn't say that I loved him. And I couldn't let that happen. And I didn't want, and I knew the gravity, my correctional officer is very, very dangerous.
Right.
And so, it was so, that's just what I lived by, and I would always, even when I'm fighting with somebody or having an argument and things aren't resolved, I'll always, be there and not let the argument take control of everything. And, going back to that, it was I watching my dad get the Holy Ghost and the night terrors, they disappeared. After he got baptized, they disappeared. Because my dad would come out, so, he used to sleepwalk. He would be on the job and he'd be like, are we gonna take him out? He would come out sleeping. If he was doing a double or working a different shift, he would come out sometimes and he would be like, are we gonna take him out? What are we doing here? He's at work.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, Dad, go to sleep. And then he would just mumble and then go back to sleep. And then, when my dad got the Holy Ghost and he got baptized, that all went away.
Yeah.
And he hadn't he hasn't had night terrors since. He's had a couple of them since I left the church, but it's just kind of like.
Do your parents go to church now?
Not really. So they have backslidden, and I believe. Well, let me tout this. So when I started to slide away, my family started to slide away. Now it's not my fault,
Right?
but I was
influenced
I was my
for
family's
good.
influence.
Yeah,
Yep.
man. Yeah.
I was my family's influence, and basically all that leading up to me, I was like on fire for God. I was playing bass in church. That was my I loved it. I love playing bass in church. Church is like I get more from just playing bass in church than doing anything else, like music wise. Of course, I love doing what I do, but church is just something. I'll never ever get over playing the same song for almost an hour and watching people break through.
Right.
And then, me getting off the bass, running around the church for a little bit, praising God, and then getting back on the bass and start playing. And again, and it was just, it's never it's so effortlessly, and I loved it so much. And that's why I was like, I could just be a janitor at, someplace.
You just want to be
a lowly position, I wasn't really ambitious per se, but I wanted to serve God, and I wanted to, be in the ministry and do all this and do all that. And so, I just went through college. I just did my thing. I was being a witness as much as I could. I wish I was better at being a witness, and it's something like I remember when I was listening to the Ben Bland podcast, and I was sitting there, and he had said like we like to hold it in. And I will admit I was very convicted by it, and because it's like I'm the only one in the college since at OU. There's another sister that went to Urshan, and she's doing her master's at OU. So it's the first time in my entire college career that there's another apostolic with me in the music department.
Oh wow! Good.
So because we preach against there, like even with the Ben Bland podcast, like you guys were talking about, like there's no outlet for creatives.
Right.
There's really
right.
If I'm not a singer,
right.
That like male singers have to sing high all the time. And if I'm not, it's like musically, if I'm not a singer or, like a traveling, like really well-known bassist in there, it's exactly like the music industry.
Right, right.
I don't know anybody. And so like, it's hard for me to, it's difficult to get, into that and to get called. But the problem is I'm not getting paid for a lot of those things. I have to pay bills somehow. And, but God is able. God told me when I came back, he's like, I will give you gigs. He's
our provider, Antonio.
Exactly. And he's like, he's been working on me in the aspect of, I am looking for job security. Like I am looking for a full-time position, that 42-week season in an orchestra, the full benefits, and all that stuff. Because, it's like, I want to provide for my wife and provide her a good life and everything else. And I want to have kids, and I want to be able to do all that. And, God's just been working on me in that, he's like, I'm going to give you the jobs.
Yeah.
And that's what he did with the Montana Symphony when I won, but we'll talk more about that. But, going through community college, did the best I can, witnessed to many people as much as I can, and tried to be a light, trying to stay above, everything that's happening. And, just trying to stay apart from the world, but be in people's world.
And that's a hard balance.
It's very hard.
Especially for someone like you.
Yeah.
Because you're so deep, and everything that you encounter has such significance and meaning. Yeah. So it's extra hard for somebody like you.
Right.
Which it's a catch-22, double-edged sword, because on the other hand, everything has so much meaning.
Right.
You feel it so deeply in such a wonderful way. You really can experience beauty, probably the smell of a flower, probably, where, because for you, it is so significant,
yes,
but you're so young, and I wonder to myself, out loud, I guess here, I wonder if God is just trying to teach you how to hold balance before you get to do it with all your heart in ministry. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you're going to go all in. That's just the way you roll. And we can't function in that.
Right.
As humans, right? And so having these other things that you simultaneously love, like a wife and a career maybe that pays the bills, and the Lord, like He's always going to be first. But I just wonder if maybe He's just evolving you to be able to hold it all together, so that you don't lose yourself.
Right.
By going all in, just to pursue Him, because that is easy to do with someone like you, because it is everything.
Right. And I tell God, like, the way how I have learned and continually learned His voice is basically like, what do you want me to do? And I will do like the first thing, the thing, like, I do the first thing I hear. And the way how God talks to me is basically, it's almost writing on the wall, like what happened with Nebuchadnezzar. I see it in my mind.
Right.
Right. And so
they have visions.
Right. And so, like, I see it, and I see it, and I feel the words too. Now, has it always been that way? No, but that's the point of trying to learn God's voice. Like,
exactly,
you need to be able to, like,
discern it.
And there was a time. So, like, there was the Milwaukee Symphony audition. So that was about a month ago. God was really pushing me to do that audition, but I was just not ready. I was not ready for it.
But He's the difference.
I know. Well, I'll tell you what. So we'll talk about Helena right now. But basically, I was not ready for Helena either, and I had to do it. And I almost canceled, but I was like, I can't, because he's telling me I have to do it. I was like, I have to do it. And so the day before, like, nothing was working. I couldn't get through any of the reps. Any of the repertoire. I had about 15 excerpts plus a solo that I had to prepare, and they're going to choose of those excerpt pools, and nothing was working. And I'll be real. Like, I was angry. I'm always angry at myself just because I can't. It's like things just don't come together, and I could feel God just like stop. And I was like, how can I not? I was like, how can I not be angry? Like, I have to get this right. Like, I have to get it perfect. I was like, there's so much on the line if I don't get it perfect. And I've said some other words, and the one thing that when I first came into church that God like really helped me get rid of was like cursing. I was a cursor. Like, I curse, like, every other word was a curse word. And then when I left, it came back, and in my anger, I do fall short in my tongue sometimes, and it comes out. And I was being real with God, but my tongue, I was cussing, and it was just a couple days ago, and I was like, how can I was in this Airbnb by myself that the orchestra was placing me in, and I was like, I can't do it. Like, how can I? Like, I was just so physically angry. I was like, everything's not working, and I was like, I was like, I finally calmed down, and I'm like crazy guy yelling in the Airbnb and talking. I was like, God, how could I not be angry? How could I not be angry at myself? Like this is my profession. I'm falling apart in it. I was like, how can I not be angry? And I just like so frustrated. And then I just started reciting. I was like, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. And, whatever he tells me to do, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to live for God. And he gave me power to become the sons of God. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be better. And I was just like, I'm going to trust him. And I'll tell you, that audition, I wish I could say, like, I prayed to God. I was the less nervous I've ever been at all in an audition. I was just listening to worship music. I already warmed up. He woke me up at 5:30 in the morning. I literally only had like 4 hours of sleep, and I had to get up, and I had to build my bass out of the crate. And I just had the concert the night before, and I was just tired. And I was like, come on. I was like, we got to do it. And started working through it, and everything was good. But man, when I went into the audition, the first round, it was terrible. I mean, I was missing notes I've never missed before, and things happened that never happened before. I was like, well, it's all up to you, God. I was like, my hands didn't do anything. My hands failed me, and my mind and my hands failed me. So, and I asked God, I was like, guide my fingers, and I was like, well. I was like, well, okay. And then all of a sudden they come back, and I was candidate 3. It was a blind audition. And they said, okay, we want to hear candidates 2 and 3. And I was like, uh-oh. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I don't have to do the solo this time, so I can do a lot better. And went up, and then they deliberated for about an hour. And then they came in and said that they wanted to offer me the position. And I was in total shock. Total shock. And God reminded me, because Milwaukee was a no hire. They had 90 bassists showed up. Only 10 made it to the semifinals, and they had 3 that made it to the finals, and they decided not to hire anybody. And could have I gotten that job? It's probably going to be open next year. But it was one of those things to where God reminded me, he's like, I told you I'm the one that's going to give you the work and the gigs.
You just have to show up and do your part.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, And when you're talking about how I go all in and I see stuff and I see kind of the significance of things. I remember I was skydiving, and I was in church, and I did my first skydiving out of Taft, right? Great place if you want to go skydiving. I got to 13,000 feet, and I couldn't see the roads, right? Because we're in the mountains, but once you get past about 10,000, 11,000 feet, the mirage covers the roads. You can't see the roads or the houses at that, but you just see the mountain area and the desert area. And I remember God spoke to me. He's like, if you could see your problems like that, it'd be nothing would affect you. If you saw your problems as I see your problems, like at this height, I don't even see a problem.
Right.
And if you just come to me. And then it's not until you hit about 5,000 feet, that's when you start seeing cars on the road. You see the roads around 7,000, but once you get about 5,000 to 4,000, you start seeing the cars on the road again. And it's like your problems are so minuscule to me that, it was just so profound that it was like, your problems are so small to me, but I want you to bring me your problems.
Yeah.
And I want you to trust me with them. And I want you to see up here, they're not a big deal.
Right.
You owe this much in student loans. You owe this much for hospital bills, whatever. They don't mean a thing 13,000 feet up in the sky. And I was like, okay, And he reminded me that.
It's comforting.
He reminded me that when I was flying in today at Fresno, because we were at 17,000 feet. And I saw how straight the fields were, and how and then he reminded me of that. He's like, all the problems that you're facing, they're nothing to me.
Mm-hmm.
They're everything when you bring them to me, but they're nothing that I can't handle.
Yeah.
And sorry about that, but sorry the tangent. But basically, I went to UOP, transferred 2018. Now, this is where my problems started happening, was that I was completely shocked about the caliber of player. Even though I was the associate principal, I was the second in the studio, per se, in level and talent and stuff like that. I was so far behind. I didn't play a real symphony until I went to undergrad. When I went to undergrad, and just the level, the caliber, I was like, how am I going to do this? Like I am so far behind. Like I got Joe here that's been playing cello since he was 3, and I didn't start taking bass seriously until I was 21.
Yeah, at COS.
Yeah, at COS. And of all
But you're
places.
a natural talent. Do you see that now?
Yeah, absolutely. It was natural talent.
And was beating yourself up
Yes.
common for you?
Absolutely. Positively. Every single day.
And so, Antonio, do you know much about intrusive thoughts?
I have them sometimes, yeah. But the clinical definition I'm not familiar with the clinical definition of intrusive thoughts.
Well, I mean, basically, there's lots of different ways that they come to people, but it is often the voice of the accuser, which we know. I totally believe intrusive thoughts come from the enemy. But do you feel like when you look back at your life that intrusive thoughts were
Yes.
a big part of, because I could just hear the
100%.
enemy speaking to you about how no one loves you and how you're not good, and
absolutely.
because you had like that sensitivity level is, like I said, a double-edged sword.
Yes.
But then the enemy definitely bogarts that and uses it against us. So are you better at that now, not listening to his voice? Do you recognize that when it comes?
I will be very vulnerable in that I'm slightly better. Slightly
Can
better.
you recognize it though,
Yes.
when that voice is speaking?
Yes. And it's difficult for me because when I was in undergrad, I would explode in the practice room. Like I was a crazy guy yelling and screaming because I just couldn't get it right.
Well, yeah, you
And-
beat yourself up a lot. You had
Absolutely.
like that perfectionistic,
Right.
which I have a million questions about that, but
Yeah.
we won't have time. But yeah, because I think, like what you said, God is the difference maker. Your talent came from him. It abides in him.
Absolutely.
And I think there's levels of excellence that we pursue,
Yeah.
but there's a very fine line of that and perfectionism, where we now then beat ourselves up and shame ourselves for what is not perfect. Because I think perfect is, as you said, a mirage. It's an illusion.
You just described everything. Yep, exactly that. And I basically, when I was in undergrad, it was like our rehearsals were Tuesday, Thursday for orchestra. I would always leave in tears. Like I would always leave the rehearsal in tears because it's just like I couldn't get certain things
Felt
together.
inadequate.
Yeah, I felt inadequate, and
Been there.
that was when everything really kicked into gear for
Yeah.
me, and I fell back into pornography and stuff like that, and it didn't help that I didn't really have a church to go to. I had no money.
And you didn't go to Christian Life Center when you were in Stockton?
No, I went to Central Vita.
Oh,
I
okay.
went to Pastor Shivers Church.
Shivers Church.
And they were great. I felt I loved going to the church, but I felt like a burden to them. I couldn't, when I was so used to I was so blessed at Pentecostal Lighthouse that, we didn't always start service on time, and that people were more willing to leave, to come pick up somebody, like if it's 7:00, like if somebody calls, like somebody's gonna come pick me up or whatever.
Yeah.
That was not what I experienced up north. And up north, it's way different. It's like everything is scheduled. I had to schedule it ahead of time, and
I would imagine that's not how you're wired too much. Yeah. Creative types generally are not scheduled types.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
So scheduling and
terrible at organizing.
Yeah. Well, that's your creative brain,
right? And I really felt bad because I didn't know these people. I didn't know these people, and I had to ask them for rides. I don't have a driver's license. I don't drive.
Is that because of your eyes? Yeah.
Yeah. I could, but I just never.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous. I felt in all honesty, I felt kind of scared to drive.
Yeah.
On a motorcycle, on a bicycle, I'm at home.
Yeah.
But driving a car, it was like I felt like I was in a coffin.
Yeah.
And I felt really bad. Like I wasn't making any money. Like, yes, I had a scholarship, but I wasn't making any money, and I couldn't pay anybody. And on Wednesday nights were my hump, were like the Mount Everest for me. I was going from like 8:30 in the morning to 7:00 at night, nonstop, maybe with an hour lunch in between. And so, like, when we were done at 7, I couldn't call anybody to come pick me up. They weren't going to answer the phone, and they weren't going to drive 15 minutes to school to pick me up, and then drive another 15 minutes back, and then the service is over.
Right. Yeah.
And then I did go to Pastor Bishop's church in Lodi for a little bit, but that was even farther away.
It is, yeah.
I was like, that was even farther away, and I felt really bad. I felt out of place. I felt really bad. They wanted to take me to lunch and dinner. I felt so bad because I had no money.
Yeah.
I had no money, and then I had to practice, and I was struggling. I was struggling, and like at this point in my life, again too, I had no romantic relationships or anything like that. I was alone, and I was alone again, and I didn't have bass to play at church. I had to
no place to fit again.
I had no place to fit. And then when I would come back, some of the brothers and sisters in the church didn't even know where I went.
Yeah.
Like, they would ask me, like, where have you been? And I was like, why didn't you just call me?
You mean when you came back to Lighthouse?
Yeah, Lighthouse, like when I was back for whatever reason, and I was like, why didn't you just call me? Like, you have my number, you have my parents' number. I
think times have just changed. People don't.
Yeah.
I am guilty. I am maybe a horrible friend in my actions because I'm not a very pick up the phone. Well, I'm not actually a pick up the phone calling a person, and it's one of the questions on the personality test is, I don't really like to talk on the phone.
I will pick up the phone. That's been me.
People do, because I think when you know that if it matters to you, then you know that it would matter to somebody else.
Right.
And I get convicted when I talk to people. Like, there's so much more that I need to be able to get better at.
Me too.
When it comes to human relationships. I have all my own reasons and all my own stuff from life's ups and downs. But so it's really then a miracle that you found your wife.
Yeah. So just going back a little bit. So COVID happened, and I spent a year and a half at home on the computer. And I wasn't really in church at this time. I would sporadically show up. I didn't know how to ask for help, really.
Yeah.
And
that makes me so sad, because I wonder how many people are in your position that don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. I wonder how many people sit there and just don't know how to talk to other people.
Right.
And that makes me so sad.
Yeah, and because, at that time, my sister had fallen away from the Davis Church. And, my parents weren't really going, they weren't really going. I will leave that to my mom to tell her story. But basically, I would show up sporadically, and I still would praise and worship. Like speaking in tongues and praising and worship is not a difficult thing for me.
Yeah,
it's not. Like I will speak in tongues like that, no problem. I have no issues doing it. Like some people, it has to build up for them. It doesn't for me. And I've asked God. One sermon that has changed my life is Gerald Jeffers, Dr. Jeffers, condemnation interferes with intimacy, when he was at Because of the Times, 2005, and that really changed my outlook. And I was so young when I saw that, young in church and spirit when I saw that, and I just started talking to God about everything, and I wanted to learn His voice. I was like, I want Him, because I was like, I knew I'm getting into a profession that's not, it's not a money-making profession. I'm not working for a bank or anything like that, or a lawyer, lawyer, or any of that. And I was like, I'm going to need you, God. I was like, I'm going to need you, because there's going to be times where it's like, I don't even know how I'm going to get through that month, And so I was just like, I'm just going to learn your voice. I would like to know your voice as much as Dr. Jeffers does. And I met him once, and he's the real deal. And I just kept pushing. But then, when I started to fall away from the church, I was like, I always talk to God. I'm always real with Him. And I was just like, why? Like, I first thing, my excuse was basically like, I want to see miracle signs and wonders. Like, why is it when we pray for people in wheelchairs, they just don't get out, And I just started questioning that, But the real reason was it was just like I just felt alone, and it just wasn't there. It wasn't there for me,
Was there contentment when you found the Lord, when you got the Holy Ghost, when you found your connection to Him? Did that shift? I mean, I think the aloneness piece, well, I have theories, but I sometimes think that is a driver that the Lord uses to propel us forward.
Yes.
But at the same time, was there comfort knowing that you had Him in the midst of that loneliness?
Sorry, I was going to sneeze, but in the beginning, yes. Before I went to school.
Yeah.
Now, God never gave me anything that I could not handle.
It just played on every single insecurity.
It played on everything.
Yeah.
And I'm alone in the school. There's no other apostolics. Some apostolics look down on me for my profession, they preach against worldly music and all that. And here I am in the crowd, I was like, well, I've been told to do this
by your pastor.
Yeah.
So you had a blessing. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know how to square this circle.
Right.
And I don't know how to fit in to that. It's like I go to Chick-fil-A. It's a Wednesday night, with the Shivers Church. I felt so out of place with all the CLC kids. It was tear-inducing to me. I felt so out of place with them, because it was just they were just in a different world. And I didn't fit in with how the apostolic teenagers acted. Especially at college, it's like I never.
Well, Antonio, you weren't going to fit in anyways, because God created you I think, very, very special. I think it's yet to be seen.
Yes.
What he has for you, but everything about you is by design.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that loneliness comes. That was kind of my story. That was always the reason I left.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord is, I think the Lord is just always trying to draw you deeper.
Absolutely.
Because he has much to reveal, and you have ears to hear him.
Right.
And there's things I think he wants to teach you and show you, and ultimately find your place in him.
Mm-hmm.
And very fortunate that he gave you a wife to love on this earth.
Right.
Because we need that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I come back, it's COVID, right? COVID ends, and I didn't play the bass for like 8 months because I had a falling out with my school, bad situation there that I was put in, and I hated school. Like, I was like, get me out of here. I just want to do my senior recital. I didn't even post the picture that I was doing the senior recital until the day of the recital, like 3 hours before. Like, I was like, I'm here in this empty space that I have to play in, and I was like, I just want to be done with it. Mm-hmm. Didn't think I was going to come back to music, and I was working at Save Mart, and loved the job. Like, I loved it way more than playing bass because I was in public. I was pushing heavy things and dealing with people, like 2,000 plus people a day. Just grocery shopping, having a good time. And then about 8 months in, I started playing the bass again, and then I started playing it. And then I was like, you know what? I want to go into music therapy because UOP has the oldest music therapy program. So I was looking at it. I went back to COS, did some
prereqs.
Some prereqs, hoping that they would transfer over, and wanted to get into psychology. But then it was about halfway through my time there again that I was like, I really want to go back into performance. Like, I was doing work and stuff like that. And then I got an email from Lowenheim, from Dr. Lowenheim. I applied to the summer festival in Fresno called FUSA. And I didn't finish the application because I missed the March 15th deadline. Well, he sent me an email about a month later. He was like, hey, I see that you applied but didn't finish. And I was like, yeah, I just missed the deadline. He goes, send in a tape. So I was like, okay, give me a week because I hadn't learned the rep. And it was Mahler Symphony 5, number 5 that we were playing. It's a very famous symphony. It's hard too. Oh my God, I was so out of shape for playing that type of stuff. And I got in, and that was the first time I met my wife there, Carla. Mm-hmm. And she was a cellist. She's from Mexico originally. She was doing her master's, and I just saw her, and I was like, wow, she's beautiful, but she probably has a boyfriend. Like, girl like that, she has somebody, at least an orbiter, or some guy.
Yeah.
And nope. Basically, she had a cart she was the librarian, so she had all the music plus her instrument plus her bag and all that. I had my backpack with the bass with a stool, like all in my hand, and I was like, I just commented, saying like, man, I wish I had a cart to put all this stuff. And that was the last time we spoke for a year.
Yeah.
And then I got into Fresno State. They tried to get me in for the fall, but they couldn't enroll me. So I basically just played in all the ensembles, showed up there, and then they enrolled me officially in the spring. And then in the spring, I became the youth orchestra coach. So I wasn't in church really at this time. Youth orchestras of Fresno, the rehearsals are on Sundays, starting at 1, going till about 9. Mm-hmm. So I did all 3 groups coaching.
We got to.
And what was that?
I was just going to say we got to.
Oh, okay. We got to finish up. But basically, I met my wife there, and we never talked. Like, we never talked at all. And I like pushing anything because I was at that mindset at that time. I was like, I'm not getting in any relationship when I'm in work related relationship. Then all of a sudden, like right before her master's recital, I started seeing her like constantly. I was like what the heck? And then she asked me for help and for dress rehearsal, so I helped her, and then we went to lunch. Basically, I was like, okay, I got to go back to go practice, right? And then she's like, oh, you don't want to have lunch? And I was like, oh, you want to go have lunch? I was like, okay. And then went, had lunch, and I paid for it, and she thanked me for helping her and stuff like that. And then her master's recital was a couple of days after that, and then the first person that she hugged was me. She picked me out in the whole crowd, and she ran up to me and hugged me.
Oh.
And then I was like, well, let's go to Cheesecake Factory. We weren't able to do that. And it was just me and like two other of her friends. And I was in Fresno till like 12 o'clock in the morning. And she had me in her car. Like she was driving me around. And then I asked her, basically I waited for the Uber to pick me up, take me back to Visalia. And I asked her, I go, hey, let's have a real date next time. And she was like, yeah, I would like that. And so I took her to picnic, and that was it. And we started going out, and then she graduated and was going to OU in Oklahoma, and she left. And she thought we were going to end it. And she was so distraught, and it was July. She was about ready to leave. And then I told her, I was like, we have the technology. Let's try long distance. Starting a new job as an orchestra director for middle school, high school for Valley Oak and Golden West. And I had money so I could go out and go see her. So I flew out a couple times on holidays to go see her. And then I didn't really propose to her. I took her ring shopping on Thanksgiving, before Thanksgiving, because I didn't know what she liked. Like I didn't want to, because all the sales associates are basically like, here's a $7,000 engagement ring. I was like, do I look like I have $7,000? And we were there for like 3.5 hours, and I was just watching her, as she's going through all the shops in this giant malls. In Oklahoma, it's all like the malls are the big thing in Oklahoma. We go back and forth. The first ring that we saw, that was the one. She really, really liked these two rings, but the first ring that she saw was the one. And I cut her off because we went back and forth like 3 or 4 times to the store to see it. And I was like, you like that ring? Let's go with it. And I thought it was just going to be a Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Christmas gift, something like that. And then we were in the car back. I was with her, and I was staying with her, and she asked me if this was an engagement ring. And I just basically, I was in the passenger seat, I looked at her, I was like, you want it to be? And then that was it. So then we were getting married. And then I went to Mexico to go see her family. And then we came back, saw the parents, and then June 29th came around. June 29th, 2024. I got married in church. Pastor Jeremy officiated the wedding. And then I had not really come back to church yet.
That's what I want to get to, because
right. And
running out of time.
So I
mean, by the way, congratulations.
Well,
I think that was a miracle, not a miracle,
yes.
but in your history and what you felt and what you went through,
right,
and how easily that seemed to have come.
Absolutely.
Like, that just really seems like that was the Lord.
Right. And, she's not in church, but she's the only woman I've ever been with.
Yeah.
And
she'll follow you, Antonio.
Right. And, speaking of that, just real quickly, I was in service last Sunday, and Pastor Borders was preaching, nothing's impossible with God. It was one of those messages. Now, this is why I would love it if churches did more testimony services, because I did not know this about Pastor Borders, but Pastor Borders was a missionary to New Zealand. Him and his wife were. He had contracted a disease in New Zealand that made him infertile. They couldn't have kids.
Oh, wow.
And so the doctor told him, like, you can't have kids.
Wow.
This is not going to work. So he heard a preacher, an old school preacher. He was kind of from the Brother Kilgore's cohort,
Yeah.
Heard a preacher talk about how, he needed an RV because he was traveling a bunch. So he, in faith, would practice driving his little sedan like he was driving an RV, like taking wide turns and taking a bunch of spaces, because he was like, I'm going to get an RV. Somebody gave him an RV.
Wow.
Now, Pastor Borders was sitting in the car, and he was like, if God can do that to an RV, he looked to Sister Borders and was like, if God can do that to him for an RV, he can do that for us to have a child.
Yeah.
Sister Borders immediately started rocking a baby. And then even him, he went under the chin, like it was like Gucci Goo, and then 2 years they had a son.
Wow.
And then they had
Praise
another.
God.
They had another one.
Wow.
When he was saying that, I saw a picture in my head, and I just saw it was this white wall. It was this white wall with dark gray carpet, and I saw myself, and I saw a bunch of people around me, and a bunch. I mean, like small children too. And I saw a bunch of people around me, and God told me, he's like, I haven't forgotten the promises, the things that you prayed about.
Yeah.
And I saw my family and the family that I would have and that I've always wanted.
Praise God.
In the picture, I cried so much.
This was just last weekend?
This was just last week. And
wow,
I was like,
God has been with you through it all.
Yeah, and I called Pastor Borders when we moved, and I was like, hey, I'm backslidden. That's how
you weren't, but you were. I know what you're saying.
Exactly, and I was like, I'm not in church, but I would love to. I prayed, and this was the church that I prayed that God led me to, and I'd love to have lunch with you. And him and Sister Borders met us, and they met us where we were at. They talked to us about music and everything, and there was a dry spell where I didn't go to church, and I struggled with so much, and then I started going again, and cleaning up and getting more clean shaven and everything, and started cleaning up and getting my life back together, and God was just always there and always pulling me closer, and
He's teaching you who he is.
Absolutely. And I remember a long time ago, he told me, like, you're going to be alone, and you're going places that most people will not be able to go or handle where you're going to go.
I believe that, Antonio.
Yeah. And he was just like, you need to be strong. And he's been pushing me. He's like, every morning I want you to read Joshua 1-9. And I started studying that, and just I'm like, okay, what does he mean by be strong and of a good courage? Right? He's like Moses just died, and he's now tasked to take over. He's now tasked to go into the Jordan, go to war. And I'm like, what do you mean by be strong and of a good courage? Like, strong is like what? Like what? What does that mean? Why? What do you mean? Why did they choose that word? When translating it, and looking up. Strong, it means to be strict, and it means
discipline.
To be disciplined, and I was like, that's the next thing, because I've been, I haven't been as disciplined as I should be, and God has been with me, and God is with anybody that calls on Jesus, He'll be there, and it doesn't matter if you're not of a UPC church or whatever, He will meet you where you're at, and He will be undeniable, like with you. You will not. There will be no doubt in your mind that He would be there. And God has just been so great and so wonderful, and I thank Him every day, and every time I think of what He's done for me, I just can't help but to cry. Like, I'm on the plane sometimes, and a song just hits me, and a song just hits me. I just can't. can't, help but to cry and just to thank God that, he didn't leave me.
Yeah.
He didn't leave me where I was at. He didn't forget, even though I cursed God, I cursed him. Like there were times in undergrad where I was like, F you, God, I hate you. Like you just left me here, and I was just being real. This is what I felt, and feelings, whatever. But it was just like I was angry because I felt left behind. I felt like the lost coin, the parable of the lost coin in the church, and that I was like nobody knew, like nobody was there but God.
Yeah.
God was there.
Right.
And that's all that matters. And he was there, and he brought me back. And I knew I would come back, but I hoped that I didn't have to die to come back.
Yeah, right.
But it was one of those things where it was like, I was like, God, I feel so bad after, like cursing God and cussing at God and just kind of like, just like, will you ever, if I am never forgiven, I'm going to keep following you. And, if I make my life better because of that, and I get to the gates and you say, I never knew you. I was like, okay, well, that what I did was unforgivable. That's fine. At least I was able to be a light for somebody.
That's not true though, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I thought at the time.
At the time.
Yeah. And it was just like, now it's like, let's go. Let's do it. Like God, God can do anything. If he can bring me back, he can do anything.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I appreciate you and your platform. And I remember when I was out of church and I saw the podcast for the first time, and I was like, hey, I know all those people.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, I was sitting there, I was like, man, this is why we need more testimony services, because God does wonderful things for people, and it's sad that I don't get to hear it sometimes, especially the old timers, what God has done for them. And it builds my faith when I hear what the old timers what they went through. So
well, Antonio, I could talk to you for hours. I'm very intrigued. Both from a Christian but also my psychology brain is just, I love how you're wired, what God is doing in you. I mean, there's so many elements to who you are that is very unique and special that God is going to use. And it'll be exciting to watch it unfold, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I completely understand.
The time
I can go
crunch.
for hours.
But I can too. I'm a talker, but anyways, I love your intensity and the pureness. Like, I just keep coming back to that word. I don't say that too often about a lot of people. And I don't mean like pureness is that it's just raw. To the degree in which you live it, you feel it, words, how deep the meaning of words are to you. Like it's everything means something. And I doubt that you take very many things for granted. If you take anything for granted, there's so much intentionality about you. And I hope that you never change that.
I hope so too.
And if you're not someone that journals, because you're probably not, because you're a creative.
I do.
Good.
I do something. I used to a lot.
I would encourage you to, especially journal everything that God shows you in visions and everything he tells you, and date them.
Yes.
I heard years ago, I've done this since I can remember, but I heard someone years ago talking about stewarding the words that God gives us. And, but I think that there can be much that we can learn about ourselves, and we can learn about the Lord, and we can learn about process.
Absolutely.
If we just would journal our life. And, I've said this before, at the end of every year, I go back and I read my journal for the year. And sometimes when I'm discouraged, because we get discouraged,
Yes.
I'll just go back and read what I've written up to this point, because every day the Lord is speaking if we just are listening, so as intentional as you are, and as deep as everything means to you, your journals will be a blessing to you, but to others who love you in your future.
I'll do that.
If you start writing, because I think your life is just beginning in many ways, and I think that place is just reserved for God. Your wife feels the place on earth for you to have purpose and belonging, but she will never feel the place that only God can fill.
Absolutely.
And with someone like you, that's going to be even in a greater capacity. So I am so happy that I got to talk with you.
Me too.
Because I saw you at church, I never knew you. And the one thing about this podcast, I've said it before, it's given me a chance to get to know these people that I have gone to church with, that I have seen, that have been acquaintances, but
Right.
we don't really know a person until we really get to hear their heart and get to hear their story. And then we just get a glimpse. But it does take us deeper into who they are as people. And I'm grateful that you never took your life. And I'm grateful that you had capacity to cry. And I'm grateful that you have a resilience about you, many wonderful things that God has gifted you in. But I'm grateful that you made it to this point,
Me too.
Antonio.
I thank God every day, and I wish we had more time. I always like to give context to things, but God has done so much for me. Even the times like when I was not living for God, He took me.
Because He doesn't leave us.
Yeah, He doesn't leave us. He took me to Europe. He took me to Vienna. I played in the greatest concert hall in the world. He's kept me. He's kept me alive, and
Well, those things are not by accident.
Exactly.
I mean, if you played in the greatest concert hall in the world, that's just a glimpse of where He will take you. And
Right. And I want to be a light for those people.
Well, I was going to say, who's going to reach those people if not us? Like, I believe we're supposed to be in the marketplace. I believe we can be in the world and not of the world. We can play beautiful music and do beautiful art and create beautiful things and still be holy.
Absolutely. Holiness
is His, and that's what we endeavor to do. But I hope that it's a wonderful compliment that Bishop McPhail, sent you out to do music. He believed that was a God-given gift, and I hope that you see that, right? And in your lack of perfection,
yes,
He's still given you so much favor, and I bet bet you're pretty darn near perfect, because I can tell by how you're wired. Like, you're just probably your biggest critic, but you've got to let that go.
Exactly.
Because the Lord did not make a mistake, and you've got to let that go and offer your best.
Absolutely.
Because your best is not going to be perfect.
Yep.
But if you can just offer your best, He takes that, He accepts that, and He makes it
absolutely
perfect. So, yes, I didn't used to be so conscientious of time, but I'll explain afterwards why I am now. But so, Antonio, I always finish with 2 questions. So,
yes, ma'am.
Make it brief, because we can talk longer.
I know.
What do you want to say to the backslider who's drifted?
The first thing that Jesus, one thing that God showed me the other day was in the Gospel of John. And the first thing that Jesus says is, come and see.
Yeah.
For you, that for the backslider that feels like they want to come back, but they don't know how, and they don't know where, and they don't know how. I would say to you is just come and see. Meaning just come to him in prayer and just talk to him. Because that's all that God wants. God wants many things, but the one thing that he wants is to hear our voice talking to him. And
communion.
And communion. And he just wants you to commune with him. He came to see Adam and Eve in the cool of the day, every single day. And he wants us there. Doesn't matter if it's scheduled. It doesn't have to be scheduled. Doesn't need to be on your knees in the closet. You could be driving. You could be on the plane. You could be in the bus. Say, Jesus. Just say, Jesus. I want to come back, and I want to know you. And he'll be there.
Yeah,
he'll be there.
Well, Antonio, I look forward to seeing what God has for you.
Absolutely. And please call me anytime.
Yeah, I'm so glad to know you, to be able to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely.
It's a blessing. It's exciting, actually. I'm very what's the word? Excited, I guess, is the word. Mm-hmm. I'm just excited. I love to meet people like you that, there's just a very specialness about you that God has marked for himself.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Sometimes I would never would feel that way, but I know God has a plan.
Because I think the enemy also knows that, and so he sets out to destroy us. Mm-hmm. But he does absolutely have a plan. He does for everybody, but
absolutely.
You just meet people that have a little bit something different that I feel like God just especially marks for greater. I heard a preacher that helped me very much in my time of brokenness say that as far down as you go in despair mm-hmm. is as high as you're going to go in the Lord.
Right.
And so if those foundations have been dug deep, it is to withstand the skyscraper that is going to be built on top of that.
Absolutely.
And so there's no mistakes in what you have suffered. God is going to multiply it back.
Absolutely.
In Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name.
All right. Well, thank you for flying in to be on my podcast. I feel so honored, and I'm excited to see.
I am honored.
See you at church on Wednesday and be able to have you here for a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely.
God bless you, Antonio.
God bless you too, and I can't wait to see this grow and to see everybody grow.
Thank you. Yes. And for everybody watching, thank you for tuning in. I know that it really matters to our guests, and it certainly really matters to me. So thank you all who support the channel, who subscribe, who share, who like, who've donated. It really, really helps. And we are seeing backsliders come home. We really, really are. We're hearing the testimonies. We're seeing it. There's many who have come back who are not ready yet to come on the podcast because it's still so very fresh for them.
Right.
But God is doing a work in the hearts and lives of backsliders. So we'll see you guys again. Thank you.
We are so glad you joined us. If you have a story of redemption or have worn the label of a backslider, we would love to hear from you. If you'd like to support our ministry, your donation will be tax deductible. Visit our website at theredeemedbackslider.org. We hope you will tune in for our next episode.